With Clemson just about 3 weeks away, Georgia camp is abuzz with all sorts of happenings. So we got Palmer Toms on the line from Dogs 247 Sports to help us break it down. Palmer, you've got your hands full.
Yeah, it's been a chaotic start to camp so far. Georgia wrapped up their first week yesterday with the first scrimmage. We're now 10 days in with a couple days off. So, it's been action packed and, certainly excited to be back in a routine of, covering the Dogs and getting ready for that big game you mentioned against Clemson coming up here before too long.
So first and foremost, you've got the former five-star tight end Arik Gilbert, who, of course, started his career at LSU, caught 35 passes last year. He's made a detour to Gainesville, Florida, then to back his home state, the Peach State there at Georgia. But unfortunately, he's had to at least temporarily leave the team.
Yeah, yesterday, I think the biggest storyline out of yesterday's scrimmage would be the absence of Gilbert there. Kirby Smart was asked about it after the scrimmage, and the consensus was, hey, Arik, we love you. We're looking out for you. That Georgia's a place to be where we can help you through whatever is going on in his life. And I don't know, full details of it all. I don't think anybody probably outside of Arik Gilbert knows all the details. I would consider Kirby Smart, probably in not in the full know either. I think first and foremost, the thoughts and prayers are with Gilbert off the field and going through whatever he's going through. But then also, the attention turns to the impact that he was expected to have on the field. Georgia was expecting him and counting on him to be part of the group effort to replace the lost production of George Pickens, who goes down with an injury in spring practice, torn ACL. There's a chance that he could be back. He's still with the team and going through rehab, and everything we've heard so far is positive there. But there's no chance that he's playing against Clemson in a couple weeks here. And Georgia needs that production from a big-bodied receiver like Gilbert. Everything we had heard about what he was doing in the summer and early in camp was positive, that he was making an impact and that he was just, such a dynamic guy who's got that too big to be covered by a cornerback, but too fast to be covered by a linebacker. You need a big-bodied receiver like that, and Georgia was really counting on Gilbert to be that guy. I think the loss of him, if it ends up happening, that he doesn't end up suiting up in a Georgia uniform, which there's been no sort of indication that is happening. I think that there's just a lot of concern over when someone steps away from the team like that and unexpectedly that situations could happen. And I think everyone immediately thinks back to Jamie Newman's opt-out last year, where Georgia was counting on him so heavily at the quarterback position. And then he, around this time last year, a couple weeks into camp, decides to step away from the team for his own personal matters. I think Georgia fans can't help but think about that and the impact that had on the season. If Gilbert does not suit up in a Georgia uniform, it's certainly a big blow. But I definitely think that Georgia still has the wide receivers and the talent on that offense that they can withstand that blow. It's not going to make it easier knowing that he could have had a huge impact if he doesn't end up playing. But, I think, like I said, first and foremost, thoughts are with Arik as he goes through this situation. And then, secondary is the impact that he could have on the football field.
And while everybody's curious about Arik Gilbert's situation, I think you stated it as well as it can be stated. Thoughts and prayers go out to Arik, and certainly it's none of anybody's business in regards to what he's going through outside of his inner circle. So you had kind of addressed the situation wide receiver as it stands without Gilbert. Anything else to report in regards to bumps and bruises and who would fit in where?
Yeah, I think whenever you're looking at a first scrimmage, with how little information that we're getting out of camp, seeing stuff, talking to coaches, the first preseason scrimmage is always eye-opening in terms of the bumps and bruises that you're withstanding in camp. And Kirby Smart emphasizes that he wants this camp to be physical. It's not about preparing for Clemson. It's about preparing for the entire season. And in order to do that, you've got to be, a physical. If you're going to be a physical football team, you got to have a physical camp and physical practices. And so Georgia's had a couple of injuries in the wide receiver room. Jermaine Burton suffered a sprained ankle. He missed the scrimmage yesterday, but they are expecting him to be back on the field this week in practice. I think that, he probably, if this is the Clemson game, he's pushing through it there, is my guess. But I think if you're Georgia's coaching staff, with the scare that he had earlier in the spring with a knee injury there, tweaked it a little bit, and the loss that you had at the receiver position already with Pickens with a serious injury, you want to be extra precautionary there, and you don't want to take any chances of pushing a guy too hard. Like I said, if it was a game, if it was the Clemson game, if it was a big time, matchup, he's probably in the lineup there. But, for precautionary reasons, he was out of the scrimmage yesterday. Another guy that Georgia was missing was Kyrus Jackson, who had a knee scope done prior to SEC Media Days in July. That's something that Georgia knew about headed into camp. He is continuing to work his way back. I think, again, Kirby Smart said that they really are expecting him to be, back in practice, ready to go this week. He was participating in a black non-contact jersey in the 7-on-7, going through drills. So he's making good progress in his return. I think you also got to think about Dominic Blaylock, who's returning from a torn ACL. That's a guy that Georgia could be counting on at the receiver position. Marcus Rosemy-Jack Saint is making his way back from an injury that he suffered, right around in the Florida game last year. I think that was the 6th game of the season there. For Georgia, that was a tough blow to lose him, but he has fully made his way back. Was on the field again in a non-contact jersey during the spring, but is back and going through full practices. Was with the team in workouts this summer and is with the team now in practice. That's a huge addition for Georgia. We talked to offensive coordinator Todd Monken on Thursday, and he mentioned him as one of the 3 returning guys with experience, along with Burton and Jackson. So I think, like I said, Georgia's got some bumps and bruises at the wide receiver position. It's nothing that's too serious, nothing that would probably keep these guys out from playing in the Clemson game, with the exception of maybe Blaylock making his way back and rehabbing that ACL injury. But I think Georgia feels very confident in what they've got. You've got playmakers like Arian Smith, who's showing out well in camp so far. Darnell Washington is a guy that they're really excited about at the tight end position. Big-bodied guy that I think they can use in various ways. They can use him as an inline tight end. They can split him out. Very similar to the ways that I think that they probably would and still could use Arik Gilbert. Gilbert was recruited to be a wide receiver, not a tight end, versus Washington is a tight end and not a wide receiver. But I think, with the way that football is played now and how much things are spread out, you see those guys, mixing it up and splitting out into the slot sometimes, some of those big-bodied tight ends. I think another tight end that they're really excited about is, Brock Bowers, true freshman out of California. He's been, going through his first camp. And then a guy that is more experienced at that position would be John Fitzpatrick. Not necessarily as much of a pass catcher. He's caught a couple passes throughout his career. Believe he had a touchdown last season. But Georgia definitely feels very confident in what they've got in that tight end room and what they can do to use the weapons around JT Daniels, who is also apparently having a pretty good camp so far. I would say the defense is probably ahead of the offense so far, but I think a lot of that has to do with what Georgia returns on the defensive line that they feel very confident in, that they know what they've got there. A situation where you've got your starting force solidified, 3 or 4 guys that are rotating in and out there, that they didn't really lose anything on the defensive line. So, when you've got questions on the offensive line and you're mixing things up there, that defensive line is going to give them trouble, which in return gives the quarterback trouble, gives the run game trouble, gives the entire offense trouble. So I think, Georgia's fans should still feel very confident in what they've got offensively with the weapons that are there, with these guys that are making their way back from injuries. But you got to understand that they're going against one of the best defenses that they'll play all season, in preseason practice. And they'll be doing the same week 1 against Clemson. But, what better way to prepare for a matchup like that than going against Dan Lanning and Kirby Smart's defense every day?
Fitzpatrick caught 10 last year with that touchdown that you mentioned against Arkansas in the opener. Darnell Washington showed some explosive ability downfield with just the 7 catches, but 23 yards per catch last year. And as you mentioned, Bowers, third-rated tight end in the nation coming out of California. When you add up the losses of Jackson, Burton, and Pickens, that's 99 catches, top 3 receivers in terms of productivity last year. But that's, again, one of the reasons why, and the Georgia roster is one of the very few in college football that can sustain these kind of injuries to a certain extent. But that is a lot of injuries this early to one position group.